soap and lines, Nate.
Okay. Looks like
Probably
we
have
are.
probably have Gerald on. Maybe we'll have Philip. He might show up.
Yeah, I would love to have Gerald. I haven't spoken to him yet. I noticed in your stream earlier you were he was on there. I really want to talk to him too. Um,
Yeah,
well, all of
yeah,
them really. The dude's a genius, huh?
yeah. He's doing some pretty cool stuff. It's more of the coils, specializing in the coils and that, which is
Yeah,
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 very important.
yeah. They Can you tell me more about? I have see a little note, some notes here. Can you tell me more about the pyramid thing with the Tesla's radiant energy
Well, it's
collector?
basically it's the same thing, but for some reason the pyramid seems to focus that energy coming in through the top.
Even
And
with
if
just
you
plastic, huh?
the best from what I've seen some guys do experiments, and it turns out PVC is the proper material to use. Anything that is considered a great dielectric, so
Hmm.
usually it's a plastic material. That's what you want, something that will not actually physically ground itself to the ground. The ground is done
Oh,
by the act. Yeah, it has to be.
oh.
Yeah, what you're looking for, what's the key to? Well, we can get into this when we go live. I think it's
No, we're live
something
now.
else.
We're
Oh, we're
live
live
now.
now.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I
so
should have told you. Sorry.
okay, yeah. So the key to these systems is called uh, a voltage differential, going
Uh,
from positive electrons to through a dielectric medium. Okay,
hmm.
the key is the dielectric. All right,
What
and
exactly would you call? Would you say that means dielectric?
dielectric is it's a substance like plastics. They're a good dielectric. Wool, sheep's wool, is also an excellent electrostatic dielectric. Anything that is non-conductive by, say, like a metal substance, a dielectric glass, just a glass bottle, is a dielectric. That's why it makes a great
Oh,
material. That's why it's a great
so you're
material for
saying
making.
you're saying it's conductive to high voltage or static, but not to low
Well,
voltage?
it's a dielectric in definition means not conductive to electricity.
Okay.
Okay, it is a great medium for power to actually absorb through and go through the other side to the ground. So what you
Okay.
have is you have a voltage differential from the high positive side goes through the dielectric to a ground. That's where it's passing through a medium or space. It could be just air. It could be air with argon gas, a noble gas inside a vacuum chamber. That's dielectric as well.
Oh.
That's why, like a plasma ball is a perfect example of this. Okay, it is isolated in a ball. It
Uh,
is vacuumed and it has noble gas inside. That's the dielectric medium, or what we call free space. And electricity can travel through free space. Now, we know this is true because if it wasn't true, then electricity would not be able to flow through a capacitor, which we all know it does because there's a
yeah.
dielectric separating the two plates. So we know electrical or energy or potential can travel through what we call free space.
Mhm.
Okay, so while that free space is actually not space at all, and that's where we get into the ether physics. Okay, so obviously free space has its ether, and the ether has properties. That's why they're able to do an experiment in the lab where they could put one photon in free space and a second proton in free space. They could be separated by great distance. If you turn one photon, the other one on the other side will turn with it. This is where we get into entanglement. Where is the connection between that free space? Is what everybody is like the holy grail of science. What is that median in between free space? Is it free space at all? Is it an actual medium that we can't see, taste, feel, or whatever?
Hmm.
It goes against all of relativity. That's why Einstein was in the beginning was dead set against ether physics. He called it spooky action at a distance. While
Right.
we know from our science now that is not the case. There is something there. It's very real, and it has properties that we have yet to understand.
Yeah. And you're talking about
Ether.
you're talking about the mainstream science, right?
No,
The
we're talking. Well, mainstream science is what everybody's been led down the wrong path of relativity. And it wasn't
yeah.
until the very, very late years of Einstein's life where he started to figure out, hmm, maybe there is something to this ether. Where
Yeah.
before he was
Yeah.
dead set because even in his mathematical equations, there had to have been something there in free space. The spooky action at a distance has no grounds anymore. It, it's
Hmm.
wrong, and that was his big mistake throughout his much of his professional career.
Right. So
But
quartz and granite, would you that would not be a dielectric, right?
sure, what makes a very good dielectric quartz
Okay. That,
crystal. Quartz crystal has a lot of great electrical dielectric properties. The
huh.
piezoelectrics, which I use in my Renegade device, it's a form of crystallization that has the piezoelectric effects. So now we're getting into the Casimir effect. Where is it getting this extra energy from? Well, I
Right.
believe it's pretty much what's happening is the Casimir effect in the piezoelectric when pressure is applied to that dielectric, a potential is created
Hmm.
and makes
Yeah.
it extreme, which in layman terms, you would think that it's not conductive, where actually it's very conductive and the transfer of power, and it can actually create excess power. And I've demonstrated that pretty well and pretty confidently in my device.
Yeah.
So,
I've heard this theory that it's antimatter from an alternate universe inside the coils, coming out of the coils. Have you heard that?
no, I haven't heard that one, but what's happening between the coils is what we're doing is we're pushing against the ether. Okay, so like if you have something in free space, say like this coffee cup, okay,
Hmm.
so suddenly I remove this coffee cup from free space. Well, what happens is that space that I just removed the cup from, something has got to take its place, right?
Right.
So if you have an electromagnetic field, we're starting to find out now if you do it correctly, you can actually move or manipulate ether.
Okay. So the collapsing magnetic field, does it turn the ether to
Well,
electricity? Maybe.
it's see like a regular generator, okay, is does not actually generate electricity. It's actually a false claim. What it does is it creates the condition to allow ether into the system. It's an archway.
Mhm.
Okay. So electrical generator is actually not a generator, it's an archway. And Ken Wheeler talks about this. If you want to learn about what a generator really is, he has some great videos on
Yeah,
what
I've
an
been watching
electric.
Ken Wheeler a lot. Jeremiah
Yeah.
hates it. Let me play a video real quick that I saw on his channel, and it's a 3 minute video from MIT. Have you seen it? The
About,
glass capacitor.
oh, well, that's how it all started with the glass capacitor. It was the Leyden jar, right?
Yeah, right. Here we go. I'm gonna play it. Okay.
Yeah, the Windhurst machine. That's a very well-known machine. It's an old machine, but it creates an incredible electrostatic. And
Yeah.
this demonstrates probably one of the best demonstrations of how to manifest the ether into a static potential. And
Right.
The Windhurst
And this,
machine is
yeah, in this video, it kind of proves that the charge is in the glass and not in the metal, which is kind of
that's
trippy.
well, the electrons flow from the wheel into the Leyden jar, and the static potential accumulates. They're an
Hmm.
accumulator, what the glass jars. They're capacitor. They store electrostatic charge. Now that goes for any capacitor.
Hmm.
Capacitor, like a lot of people think electricity is stored in a capacitor. False. An electrostatic potential is created in the capacitor. The capacitor plate stores electrostatic charge, not electricity. There's a difference. The electrostatic charge inside a capacitor is not electricity. And a lot of people think it is, and it's not. It's electrostatic discharge accumulating on the plate, travels through the dielectric to the second plate, and then out. When you
Yeah.
start drawing off that capacitor into a wire or a different medium, it now becomes electricity. But
Right.
in the capacitor, it is not electricity, it's an electrostatic accumulation.
Hmm. Hmm. Is
So,
that what isn't that what a Tesla coil would do too?
sure, well,
Yeah.
see, one quote that Tesla made, and I was never able to find the quote ever again for some reason. He says when he basically, I'll try to paraphrase what he was saying. When you start dealing with the electrostatic medium, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's coming right from Tesla. And when somebody like him says a statement like that, you take notice to it because he
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
I believe the electrostatic charge is there's different levels of what we call electricity or energy, but things have to happen down the row in order to make an electrostatic charge into electricity. Now, the first stage is the ether. When the ether accumulates, electrostatic charge is present. So you have ether on either side of the wire. When electricity is applied, a field is created around it and it creates an electrostatic charge. Now, the second you put it through a coil with magnets that focus and impulse the ether into it, it now transforms that electrostatic charge into what we know as electricity.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
so electrostatic charge is, I would say, stage one of energy that we know in the third dimensional reality. Okay,
Hmm.
that's the
Yeah.
first thing we see is electrostatic charge, right? And there's a lot of it. And perfect example, you get out of your car if it's really dry outside and you touch the door and you get zapped. Well, that's a
Yeah.
perfect example of electrostatic charge buildup on the car. And the second you put your hand on the car door, you now become the ground. So all that electrostatic charge that has been accumulated while you're driving your vehicle, it has to go someplace. And you just became the grounding rod, right?
Right.
And and uh, it's been actually tested that that discharge can hit 1.5 kilovolts of power.
Yeah.
That's a
Crazy.
lot of that's a lot of voltage. Now the second question is why doesn't that voltage kill you? Well, it has to do because there's no current in that static charge. When you
Right.
start accumulating a current flow in that static charge or electricity, that's when it becomes lethal.
Right.
So
It's
yeah,
probably not the skin effect. Right.
yeah, the skin. That's right. You get the skin effect. That's why it doesn't penetrate the body. Now, if there
Yeah.
was current
Amperage.
driven behind amperage created in that static electricity, you'd be fried chicken, and
Right.
you won't exactly. So there is different levels of electricity. So it's these medians that we have to figure out, and the one that's been totally ignored for 100 plus years is the ether. Now
Yeah.
science is starting to take a second look at this open space, what we can call free space, actually is not open free space at all. There's a lot going on there. Because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there,
Right.
right?
Right. Just like air. You know.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
If because we're in it all day long, we don't even think about it. We're living in a medium, and because it's such natural to our bodies to breathe air, we don't even think about it. We just go about our daily things, and we don't even have a second thought, right?
Right.
Same with the ether. It's no different. We're in the ether. Every single object in your room is inside the ether. There's no such thing as free space, and this is where science has to catch up a little bit. Actually, a whole lot. But
Yeah. I want to
so
talk about your what do you call it? Maverick? Is that what you called it?
the Renegade device.
Renegade. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah. But let me play this really quick. It's 3 minutes.
yeah,
It's pretty trippy.
oh yeah. That spark it's making is probably about 50,000 volts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes 12,000 volts to make a spark jump 1 inch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But just with no current.
oh, it can still that one there is got probably some current behind it. I wouldn't be touching it. You wouldn't
Yeah.
catch me touching it. Like when you're getting up in the 50,000 volt range, regardless if there's current or not, it's not going to feel good.
Right. This is the trippy part. They take off the metal and it doesn't shock until the metal's put back on. It's soaring in the glass or the dielectric.
That's right. What it's doing is pulling the electrons. It's pulling the electrons from it. So he's going to touch it now, and that jar has actually stored that charge. There you go. See?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, he's gonna recharge it.
So now these experiments were done in the 1700s, right around the same time Faraday was making his coils. So they
Right.
figured out that you could store electron charge inside a Leyden jar
Yeah.
for a long period of time. That charge will stay in there.
Yeah. Years. Right.
So basically, all he's doing is charging it up with electrons, electron potentials going through it and going into the jar. And now all he's got to do is short it out, and you'll see the power there. He could leave that jar there for a week, go
Yeah.
back and short it out, and it will shock you.
Now he's gonna take the metal off.
Yeah.
He's gonna take the metal off, and the metal's not gonna do anything.
That's right. So, because it's lost its charge, right?
Until he puts the glass back on, and then it's back again.
Yep. Is because the charge has to go through a dielectric medium. See, that's
Yeah.
how that's how you transfer electrons from one medium to another. There has to be a dielectric there, right? And the
Right.
same thing
Right.
with
Could you hear that?
no, I don't hear anything.
Okay. Sorry, it was still playing in the background for me.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
Pretty trippy.
So yeah, like anybody who gets into it, you got to educate yourself right from the beginning.
Hmm.
and studying Faraday's law, Ohm's law. Then you'll get into J.J. Thomson and Maxwell,
Maxwell. Yeah.
Tesla. But the real stuff you have to really understand is the real early stuff where they're dealing with electrostatics.
Yeah.
Electrostatics.
There's a physics chick on here that she's a history buff, but she goes through all this early stuff, and that's the best way to learn about this stuff. Is you
You
know
have to start. You can't start from the middle. You have to start from the beginning. If you don't
yeah
have a good solid grasp of the early experiments of Faraday and the Wimhurst machine in creating electrostatics and Volta, how he created the first battery, you have to go back in history and teach yourself this stuff because this history is critical to you understanding the physics of electricity. You have to
yeah,
start from the
especially
beginning.
since you can't trust academia anymore. You
You
know.
know, academia is like they're jumping through the pages where you got to start right from the zero. You got to start from the very earliest experiments. Like a simple thing that we totally take for granted now, a battery. Okay. Well, in Baghdad, they made a Baghdad battery, and that goes back, what, 4,000 years ago.
Right.
Okay. We're talking before Egypt. They were making batteries. But then it poses the big question: what were they using these batteries for?
It was
Right.
electroplating allegedly. Yeah.
Well, that's what they say, but it could have been, they might have had some way of creating light with it that we
Yeah.
don't know of.
Right.
If they were,
Everyone
if
says
they're,
where's all yeah. Everyone says where's all the wires.
well,
Tesla proved you really didn't need the wires. You know.
well, that too. And the other thing is, it goes through the course of time. 3,000 years ago, what's going to be left,
Yeah.
right?
Especially under the ocean for 1,000 of those years.
And honestly, anything from that era, all we know of is stone structures that have survived 3, 4,000 years of history.
Yeah.
Those are the and those are the only things we have. Those are the only clues that we have to go on. We can speculate all we want. I'm even surprised they were able to find the Baghdad battery. That
I
was a
know.
very, very, that was a very, very important find. For the fact is that they knew how to build a battery. What
Yeah.
they were using, what they were exactly were using that battery for, we can only speculate because there is no record of it. There's no historical record
Sure.
of the Baghdad battery, or very, very limited.
Maybe it's
So,
underneath the Sphinx, like they say. All the records. But there's
oh,
no. It's a battery, and it couldn't be anything else. You know, like they're saying that the Ark of the Covenant was a capacitor, even if they didn't intend for it to be. But that was definitely a battery, and there's no way it was intended for anything else, right?
and well, the one thing we do know from history that the Ark of the Covenant was a
A
source of
capacitor.
power, that a capacitor that was extremely deadly, and
Yeah.
anybody who got near it and didn't know how to handle it, you're having a 2, 3 million, volts of charge go through your body, and you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Simple as
You know,
that.
I have a bunch of theories on the Ark of the Covenant. I don't really want to get into them all. I was noticing last night on Bernie's show, there was a guy, and I guess it was Bob Greenwell or whatever, the Martin Fleshman
Oh,
thing.
Bob Greenyer.
Bob
Bob
Greenyer.
Greenyer.
He was saying that if you charge something over 1.3 million volts, it ignores gravity. Did you hear that? That's the first I
Yeah,
heard that was last night.
yeah. It doesn't surprise
Maybe.
me at all.
Well, the Ark of the Covenant was defying gravity. That's they specifically said it. You know, I
So
have a bunch of theories on this thing, but it probably was a multi-tool, right?
yeah,
But I'm gonna.
because back in those days, if you see electricity flowing through a capacitor like that and the significance of it, you're going to look at it like it's completely magic, right?
Yeah.
Because in the
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
days, that's where the word electrician came from. Instead of magician, because he was working with electricity, they called him an electrician,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
That's where the word came from. Because
You
to
know,
them,
that.
because at that time, to them, electricity was magic.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
Definitely.
even
Also,
today, like even today, I still
sure.
look at electricity as like pure magic. Like it
Absolutely.
is that.
Dude, I think most electrical engineers, especially people dealing with free energy, are. You know, it is.
Yeah,
Is it
they look
alien?
at it.
Was it given to them? What are they doing 4,000 years ago carrying some electrical device, carrying a gigantic, scary capacitor around? At very minimum,
Mhm.
it was
Right.
probably a lot. What are they doing carrying this
Well,
electrical device? What was Aaron's rod? Was it a Tesla coil or a crystal radio?
could have been.
Coil?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah,
that's these mysteries, that we probably will never find out because it's lost through the time, right?
sure,
There are several cataclysms happened on the planet that wiped everything out or wiped out a whole generation of people. And the knowledge that they had at that time, well, if they get wiped off the map, guess what? All the information and all the knowledge goes with them.
sure,
So,
sure.
and if
And
there's,
I also part of me thinks that I've been studying this, just trying to figure things out. So the inside the Ark of the Covenant was the Ten Commandments, which are actually, if you start looking into this, they're made of blue sapphire, and they're not the commandments. The word is it's the 10 words or phrases. It actually they specifically don't use the word commandment or law, and they do have
yeah,
a they did have a word for that.
yeah, and
And both tablets were identical. They both had all 10 commandments on them on both sides, and it said that God used his finger and cut both sides at the same time. That sounds like a
right,
laser to me, and I kind of think maybe they were a piezo transducer,
yeah,
twin ones, because they were identical. By the way, they were both identical, which
yeah,
means they would resonate together.
yeah, exactly. And the
Food for thought.
piezoelectric, the piezoelectric is, still being used today, in
Sure.
regular industry. Like it's used in ultrasound. It's used in ultrasonic therapy. I actually had that done to my shoulder because I was getting calcium buildup in my shoulder. So he
Hmm.
hooked up some transducers with a little bit of a gel and just started rubbing around the muscle area where all the calcium was building up, and it was basically deteriorate, all the calcium buildup in my shoulder. So it's a
Right.
very useful tool,
Would you
and
say
it's
that
used.
that's pulling the ether too, the same as a coil?
I would say it has very much to do with the Casimir effect.
Hmm.
Um, it's demonstrating that there is an electrical source coming from the ether. It's drawing it into it. It's an accumulator. It's transferring the charge from or not the dielectric medium, but from the ether medium into a medium that it could be transferred to another one. See, it's a transfer of charge.
Hmm.
And if you can figure out a substance or a device or an apparatus that can basically draw the ether into your system, well, that's pretty much what you would define as free energy because there's a potential there that you didn't have to put any energy in to get it in the first place. If you can
Right.
naturally extract that from the air, and that's what Nikola Tesla's radiant energy device was, to harness any cosmic particle, sun, electrostatic, ether, anything that was up in free space or in the air can accumulate this charge on the plate. And when you can, so basically the construction of the device, I'll kind of describe it so you kind of understand what it is. The plate that's up in the air is actually a dielectric it's a capacitor. So basically, it's kind of like an inside out capacitor. So instead of having the two plates on either side and the dielectric in the middle, it's actually the opposite. The plates in the middle and the dielectrics are on either side. So whatever energies is coming to it from both directions will go through that dielectric and get trapped in between the dielectric and the plate. And the shinier, the more apparently anodizing that plate apparently helps. And it has to be a blue anodized. And that'll
Really?
actually attract, yeah, a blue anodized uh, mirrored plate, steel plate.
That sounds sort of like blue sapphire, like
Yes,
the tablets are made of, doesn't it?
that's
Hmm.
right. And that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. So if you can make a really good accumulator, you know, with the you could have probably a dielectric as much as 1 inch thick on either side of that plate in the middle.
Hmm.
That's going to accumulate a hell of a lot of charge, an electrostatic potential. So if that goes
And just a
down
technical
one,
question for someone who's going to try to build this, would like me, or just advice in general. Um, the diode. You said to put the diode between the ground and the coil, or the
yes.
battery.
Okay. So I'll explain the circuit. So the one wire is coming down from the sky, from the plate, goes straight to the ground. So before it hits ground, you want to put a diode facing in the opposite direction. Okay, because on the planet we're living on a capacitor. So the one plate is the ground, and the other plate is what's in the sky. So
Hmm.
you want those two charges to converge and meet in the middle. So
Hmm.
it's going to pull negative electrons from the ground and positive from the ground. While it's a magnetic effect, it's going to pull them together, and that's when you get lightning.
Okay.
That's when you get lightning. So
Oh.
what?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Same thing. No
So
different.
both capacitors are aiming the so the diodes are both aiming towards the battery.
Are towards the center where you're eventually going to tap off it. All right. Now that
Okay. Yeah.
system there.
Okay.
So that system there is a perfect example of the Tesla one wire system. Now all you have to do is connect two wires somewhere in the middle, or maybe a foot off the ground. Take two wires off, put it through a high voltage full wave bridge rectifier, okay, which now takes that potential and make it into a DC potential, and you dump it into a capacitor, okay.
Sure. It
Now what
it's
Tesla
strange to me.
hold on,
It,
hold on a sec, let me finish because this is kind of important. Tesla states in order to take any free power static ether energy, you have to gather it and put it in a capacitor. As soon as you get it in the capacitor, he states, and I've actually seen written documents where he's talking about this. As soon as you get it accumulated in a capacitor, he says, now you can do whatever you want with it. You can make it AC power, you can make it DC power. You have to accumulate it in this reservoir. As soon as that's done, you can make it AC or DC at will. And that's it.
yeah.
So
What I don't understand is a capacitor holds DC, correct?
it holds charge. It
Oh.
holds charge. It could be a
It's
DC
so
charge,
coming off of
or
the capacitor.
so what you want to do, and like I
Um.
just gave one example. I just gave one example. You could dump it in right from the wire. You could dump it right into an AC capacitor if you wish. But it's very high frequency. But the best way to do it is first thing, right after you tap right off that wire, you want to put it into a bridge rectifier to make that go in one direction, which is as a DC current. Put it into a DC capacitor, but then from there, you can modulate it into and put it through, say, a transformer to make it into 60 hertz, or keep it as DC and charge batteries with whatever. So the idea is to
Right.
tap off that one wire. right? Tap off the one wire.
But if
You
someone's
have to,
using a DC capacitor, then do they still
yep,
need a full bridge rectifier between that and the battery?
yes. Well, yeah, I would, yes. Oh, definitely, especially when it's
Hmm.
coming right off that, when it's coming right off that wire. Yes, yeah, put it through a rectifier right away.
Okay.
If you
I
if
thought
you
in your
do that,
video you said, I thought you said put a full bridge rectifier on both sides of the capacitor.
yeah, that's if you're doing this, the actual
AC
application that
capacitor.
I'm doing. Now, the reason why I did
Hmm.
a bridge rectifier before the capacitor and after the capacitor is because I had to change the symmetry of the power in order to loop my system back into itself. Because
Okay.
if you don't do that, you will recognize that's the same power that was feeding the system,
Right.
right?
Would
And you'll
a
short.
would a uh, would a step up transformer do that as well? Would that break the symmetry? Or
It'll break
or
this. It'll break
step
this.
down?
It will break the symmetry if you change it from AC to DC and then back to DC again, or in what they call an isolation transformer. So there's no physical connection between the two. There's a separation. They call it an isolation transformer. You could use that too. That will break the symmetry. But I find the capacitor before, or sorry, the rectifier before the capacitor and the rectifier after the capacitor works very well too. And that's how you can break the symmetry. As soon
Hmm.
as you break the symmetry, you can loop it right back into the system again. So if you got like a battery running the system, now you can loop it all the way around the system and back into itself without shorting the motor out. And you'll know
So
right away if it.
I'm gonna try an indoor grow room setup for some electroculture, and I'm wondering if I can just run LED uh, and get the
Make
same effect
a
that you're getting with the over
make
unity.
okay. If you're going to do electroculture, try this. Make a small pyramid. Okay,
Hmm.
make a small pyramid, and then what you're going to
Already
want
got
to
it.
do. Okay, so I would put some nice, good size barium ferrite ring magnets in the corners, in the four corners
Hmm.
of the pyramid. All right,
Hmm.
and then try germinating your seeds. You're going to find it's going to help it accelerate the germination process of the seed. Uh,
Yeah.
Actually, from what I've been told, uh, well, Gerald does electroculture too, and he has like iron wire coils in his garden, which helps confine or draw in a field into the space where the plants are. Because the
Okay.
plants got so if the plants got charge on it, they're going to grow faster. They're going to be more lush. The fruits and vegetables will be a lot more tasty. And from what also I heard, it improves the shelf life of
Sure.
his produce.
Sure.
So,
But my question is, can I get an over unity device to run the light?
well, you could use electrostatic charge, from the air. You can use the Tesla one wire system
Okay.
and hook it up to a plate. Now you got to make sure the plate's isolated; it's not touching any metal. So
Yeah.
you would have to use.
I guess what I was
So
asking. I was saying, is there a way to use your system that you're using with your motor, which is causing over unity in the light setup,
well,
but without the
well,
Tesla?
you could, but it's not really designed for that. My system is designed to charge batteries. It's a battery charging system that
Gotcha.
basically
Okay.
it's a self-sustaining battery charger. So it has its own battery pack. It recycles its own power. It runs on an implosive inductive reactance. Um, that's how the motor runs, and it basically draws what we call a zero current potential. Because of the zero current potential, the batteries don't wear out. I've been running the system for a month, and the batteries haven't gone below. I've lost maybe while I'm running it, I might lose zero point 0.2 volts. But after I stop running it for a couple hours and turn it back on, it's back up to full power again.
Yeah, that's
So,
crazy. You should do a
so
GoFundMe or something like that, or one of those investment, you know what I mean, things. Find some investors.
yeah, yeah, I got to get into that. I've been kind of procrastinating on doing it. I've had people say, "Yeah, you got to get a GoFundMe," but the thing is, I'm working with a totally different science that totally goes against all regular electrical engineering, physics and science. What I'm
Sure,
doing is
that's what we need. Yeah,
like basically what we know about electrical science today is totally freaking backwards. It's totally wrong.
yeah. You see this?
So
Bernie's coming. Yeah,
yeah, hey Bernie.
this is. Let me play something real quick here from Bernie's show last night. I don't know if you saw it or not. It blew me away. Give me just a sec here. It's
Yeah,
actually only about 4 minutes, maybe.
A unique discovery of two scientists of Ciba-Geigy, now Novartis, in Basel, Switzerland. Guido Ebner and Heinz Schürch placed seeds of germ cells of different species into an electrostatic field, a DC voltage field, much like we have it naturally in our atmosphere in a thunderstorm or as it occurs between membrane dipoles in the cell. Only they created fields of an intensity of up to 10,000 volts. The seeds remained in the electrofield for about 3 days or sometimes longer, and then were allowed to sprout and grow. The resulting plant or organism displayed a striking phenomenon. Modern day maize seeds, for example, will develop up to 5 years in one place, where normally only one cob develops. This is how maize grew in much earlier evolutionary times. Genetic characteristics that had been lost through cultivation or crossbreeding were brought back and were continued into the following generation of the same plant. The same happened to modern day wood fern, whose spores were treated in the electrostatic field. It reversed its evolutionary history and grew into a different phenotype of a fern that grew millions of years ago, but no longer today. Chemically and genetically, the wood fern was still the same, but its shape and appearance had jumped back in time. How is that possible? Unless the genetic information is stored somewhere else, possibly in the geomagnetic field, or will at least require a coupling with this background field to access the current version of a plant.
Crazy. Right?
So that's
yeah,
just like
Mm.
it's amazing.
This is unreal. It goes on too if you want me to keep playing it. But I tell you what I'm doing for sure. I'm gonna try this immediately.
yeah, try it out.
I'm gonna use jalapeno peppers. So I don't know if they're going backwards in time. Do you think they also point out that they did this with trout, and the trout became a predecessor, like evolution wise, and got a bigger jaw and a couple of
Mhm.
weird things.
Yep.
Hmm.
Pretty,
So the
it's a little,
electrostatic field changes DNA. What does it do to our DNA?
exactly.
Would a Tesla coil do the same thing?
Well, you got to think back. If you want to go biblical on this, you go back to
Yeah.
the book of Enoch. All right, there were giants.
Hmm.
Giants roamed the land just before the flood. You know, what electrostatic properties our atmospheric conditions of the planet were at that time. They could be very, very different to what they are now. So, you know, you could say maybe it was evolutionary. It could be something, I think, you know, somehow the genome was changed that allowed those people to get so big.
Sure.
So, these bodies are popping up all over the place in North America, all over Europe and Asia. You know, it's not like it was happening in one spot on the planet. It was happening globally at that time. So this goes back again to history stuff that's been wiped out. You know, there's very little fossil record. There's no written record other than what we know in the Bible that talks about the book of Enoch and the giants. You know, you got what was it? That famous one in the Bible, uh, the giant and that kid that were fighting. Off the top of my head, it's I forget.
Yeah. David and Goliath.
David
No.
and Goliath. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. So Goliath was he an Nephilim? Was he a Rahalim? What species of human was he? Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That was Bernie messaging me.
Yeah.
He's too far out to be in here. He had to drive 45 minutes to get on.
Yeah.
Too bad. That show last night they went into shape shifting too, and how this is very likely is all related, just with electrolysis and without doing gene splitting and whatnot. You know,
Right.
maybe pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So
There's a
that was a
lot.
good show. That was
Yeah.
very
There's
good.
good to know. I personally don't really focus too much on the history. I do focus on certain aspects of history that help me out with my projects and
Sure.
understanding with what I'm working with. But when you get
Yeah.
into the deep history with Egypt and what all that
Yeah.
stuff is about, and then Tesla had a big interest in the pyramids. From what I understand, he went to the pyramids 2 times in his life,
Yeah.
and in his later years, in his mid to late 70s, he started doing a lot of experiments with quartz crystal.
Yeah. I
And
couldn't find much on that.
yeah, there's not much out there on it, but he did make a couple statements that quartz crystal is a living entity if they're alive,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
which is a pretty bold statement, right?
Yeah.
Pretty bold statement coming from him.
He knew that we would be talking about this 200 years later. You know,
Well,
or 100 years later.
he knew about the cell phones that we're using right now.
Yeah.
He made that statement in the 1900s that one day
Yeah.
we'd be talking with a handheld device that you could fit in your front pocket and you could talk to anybody in the world and see live video and sound at will.
Sure.
And we're using so much of this technology today, we take it for granted. Like Bluetooth, he invented robotics, remote control, uh,
Radar,
like
neon.
radar,
Yeah.
X-ray tubes, and all that kind of stuff. There's just so much that he contributed that at the time he didn't realize how much of an impact his technology would be 100 years down the road. He
Yeah.
knew at his time he knew at his time he was being suppressed greatly. But he did make the statement. He says this century belongs to the bankers and the money mongers, but the next century will be mine.
Yeah. He was right so far. Yeah.
Right.
The one after that, even maybe. Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it,
They say
it's up to, it's
Napoleon.
up.
They
Yeah,
say
we
Napoleon.
don't have, it, we will never know exactly what he went through, and we'll never exactly know to the extent of what he knew. That is all, a lot of conjecture. Uh, a lot of um, a lot of people just didn't know. A lot of people think they know exactly what happened. I don't know exactly what happened with him, but I have a kind of an idea of what he was going through at that time. and what he had to deal with, like suppression, big time,
Big time.
especially in the after 1900. Oh my God, you
Right.
know they might as well have just killed the poor guy. You know, that's how badly they suppressed him.
They may have,
So,
you know?
well, no, they didn't kill him. They basically castrated him to the point where he lived almost like a homeless man for the last half of his life, and pretty sad. You know,
Yeah.
most of his great discoveries and all that stuff was all done in, right up to about 1900, and then everything started to go south. As soon as the Einsteiners came out and the
Yeah.
photoelectric effect, and people were jumping on the bandwagon with that, things just went south. As soon as he lost the Wardenclyffe Tower, he lost all his major financing.
Yeah.
You know,
There's a theory that, have you heard the theory that the CIA took him under their wing and rebuilt Wardenclyffe Tower, but 10 times bigger with the New Yorker?
yeah,
Maybe.
that to me, that's just a
I,
tall
I
tale.
hope so. I hope so.
It's a tall tale. You'll never find out stuff like that,
I know. Well,
unless there's.
the place had its own power station when it didn't really need one, which is a pretty big deal. And they were saying that he wanted to make Wardenclyffe the same size as the pyramid. And I looked this up. The New Yorker is almost exactly the same height as the pyramid. In fact, it's slightly taller than the pyramid now. But when the pyramid was actually at the time they built it, it would have been a little bit taller, about 8 meters taller than the New Yorker. So you
That's
never
pretty
know.
big.
It's
I've been
possible.
to the I've been to the New Yorker hotel, so I know how big it is, and
Really,
I've been to the Empire State Building, and I know how big it is, and that's
it's huge.
ginormous.
Yeah. So
I
maybe
I've
they
been
built the New Yorker. Maybe the CIA did that. They were fighting Hitler at the time. Maybe they said, "Hey, let's rebuild your Wardenclyffe Tower, but in secret, and let's do it bigger. And by the way, give us the death ray right now." You know, he would have.
yeah
I would have.
yeah
Maybe it's possible.
the one thing that I know that is actually very plausible of one of the devices he did make was the death ray, and I do believe that was real. Even
Yeah.
Eric Dollard believes that was a real device, and
Yeah.
it's not that hard to make it either. That's the
Yeah.
scary part.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why the U.S. government seized that paper, because they had Donald Trump's great uncle.
Yeah.
Uh, he was the one
Yeah.
who seized all the documents and went to start going through all the paperwork, and he had to sort out which was national security and which was okay to release to the public.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But he didn't find
apparently,
anything. He didn't find much of anything, right? That's what they
of
say.
course he's not going to say anything.
Crazy.
Like, come on, how naive can people be? You know what I mean?
Pretty naive. Or
Yeah,
just blatantly ignorant, really, you know?
I would say naive.
Too bad. Okay. That's nice of you.
but they said that most of the stuff's been released, but obviously there's going to be quite a few things that he had that won't be released, because
Sure.
before he died, he was about to release a paper on his theory of gravity, and it
Really?
never came. Yeah, and it never came out. The paper was never published, but I do believe that paper might have been in that stockpile that was seized.
I'd love to hear that. Huh? Man.
Well, I've seen some renditions of his theory, which sounds pretty plausible in the idea of what they had on the paper, but I don't know for sure that that was actually what he had written down for his theory of gravity. But
Yeah.
I don't think they'll ever release that, because if that paper ever got out and he was accurate and it did work, it would revolutionize the entire planet as we know it tomorrow.
It's very likely
So
that that's what we're using for our advanced aircraft now. Maybe. You know?
yeah, well, electrogravitics is used on the B-2 stealth bomber. That's pretty well known. That's
Hmm.
not really much of a secret. So obviously, charging the wing actually enhances lift.
Crazy, right?
right?
Yeah. Yeah, the Apex stuff is pretty good. It's a little
So
too much into physics for me, but I follow it okay, I think.
yeah, to me, to get any gravity, you have to have something to power it first. So if you
Yeah,
can't come up with a power system that can meet the requirements of it, why even start with the anti gravity? You get the power system down first, right?
sure,
Because
sure,
you're not going anywhere without a power system,
right.
right? Now, if the technology is so exotic that you don't even need a power system, well, now we're talking physics that's just way out there. That's way beyond our capability at this time.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
all that's conjecture too. So
sure. I would love to hear
um,
what he said about it. Tesla, that is.
yeah, yeah. But
Maybe
he
someday
did
we
make a
will.
lot. Well, I think you can only hide a secret for so long before things start coming out. You
Yeah.
know, you know, and a lot of it's over 100-year-old secret right now. Some stuff's eventually going to get leaked out. Little
Hmm.
by little. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's like any other big conspiracy in the world, right? Eventually, stuff does eventually come out, right?
Yeah. Like when no one cares anymore. You know,
Well,
that might not be the case
you
with
know,
people like us, but
no, I I, I kind of would say it's going to mean something, but people will be like, it won't be as a big shock,
right.
because by the time that happens, maybe a lot of this physics will be already figured out by that point. So
Sure.
it'll be a gradual transition into that, right? And
Right.
kind of like the UFO thing. Okay, it started, in 1947 that we know of. It probably stuff going on way before that in history, which there's depictions in the pyramids and all that stuff. So we know there's been some funny stuff going on since then. But
Yeah.
now in the last 5 years, the cat's been kind of let out of the closet, so to speak, and things are coming out. Secrets eventually are going to get out, right?
Sure. We hope so. We hope so. But
And
it'll be written by the
you
victors, and Tesla's not going to be one of those victors.
see, I think
You
the
know.
biggest fear is see the biggest fear to the establishment is us figuring it out. It's like, okay, well, if we figure out how oxygen is, okay, if we make our own oxygen, well, does that make it illegal? Because it is a natural substance that we need to live. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or if somebody comes up with a free energy device and starts making his own power at home, is that illegal? You know,
It
because
will be made illegal. Well,
well,
they would.
we're already doing it right now with solar panels and inverter, and running your house off the sun power. So technically we're already doing it, so they're not throwing anybody in jail over it. You know what I mean?
They need a way to tax it or to charge for it.
Well, yeah, they want to integrate it into society, but they got to make sure they're going to be able to do it in a way where they can make their bottom line. And it goes back to even back in Tesla's era. He wanted to provide free energy through his Wardenclyffe Tower. And JP Morgan said, well, I can't put a meter on it. Why would I want it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Plus, it would get rid of all those other industries like rubber and copper and you know trains.
exactly. He's looking at this as an economical standpoint versus a moral and technologically um, way that would better society. He didn't care about that. He cared about the bottom line. How much money is he going to make,
Yeah.
right? So,
He could have made the same though. He could have used it to his advantage. Guarantee you. And why are we just now having wireless chargers? You know what I mean?
well,
He had
it's
that
been
shit in
around
what
for
1901 or something.
See, it's been around forever, but like they did everything that they could to wipe Tesla out of the history books. You
And
had
they
the
did.
rocket. Well, the Rockefeller Group, they were the ones that owned all the major publications, so they did their darnest to write him out of history.
And they did
So,
successfully.
and like you go to a university or a high school now, do you see them ever talking about Tesla? Never. It's not even mentioned in the
No,
textbooks, which I
it's
think
starting
is
to
a
pick up
huge
amongst the
disservice.
grassroots, though. People like me and you are making it look. The average person knows who he is at least now. You know?
Well, the problem is the average person doesn't really care,
Yeah.
right? Let's face
Right.
the facts. The
Yeah.
average person doesn't care. There is a small community of us worldwide that do care and do want to know, and
Yeah.
that's where we
It's
take our own initiative, to start digging this stuff up. And it's
right.
like a treasure. It's like a treasure hunt for lost information that we know the records are out there. We have to find them. And when we can
Right.
find these records and learn from our predecessors, the godfathers of electricity, then we'll have a better understanding of where everything started and understand exactly what electricity is and where this thing we call energy, what is the actual definition of energy? And most engineers will answer this question 100% incorrect.
Right. We're still teaching that the electrons move backwards. You know, it comes out of the negative and goes to the positive, right? But
Well, even
all the
Tesla,
diagrams still are still teaching that incorrectly. It's
the
crazy.
only person that I knew of in history that actually knew what an electron was is Taylor Farmer Farnsworth, the guy who invented the TV. He was the only guy that knew exactly what an electron was, and it wasn't an electron.
Right. Right.
And he didn't write any books on about it, and he's dead.
And if he did, it would have gotten suppressed.
And
Likely.
Even Tesla denounced the electron theory.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there is a form of what we call an electron, but I think what we're calling an electron should actually have a different name to it, and
Like a field.
I think it's a coagulation of a static charge at the subatomic level that basically creates what we call a current flow of power or a static. Um, I personally do not know for sure, but the only thing I could possibly think of that would come anywhere close to it would be somehow uh, kind of like ball lightning, where
Mm-hmm.
it's a charge confined within itself at the subatomic level, and we call it an electron. Where Tesla said no, it's not an electron. It has electrostatic properties to it. It's something else. Was
Are we
it
going to make ball
argon?
lightning? I'm going to try
Was
to.
it Yeah, dangerous stuff.
I know. I'm
The,
going to try. I think a lot of people in here
yeah,
are going to try.
the other thing too is you're getting into these experiments, and when you start getting into high voltage stuff, I've been doing kind of a lot of reading on this lately, and there were some guys out there that were doing experiments, and they didn't realize they were getting exposed to a huge amount of X-rays coming off their device.
Yeah.
And one guy I didn't know of that was doing stuff like this was Stanley Meyer, the guy who made the water car. He was getting blasted with a lot of X-rays from his machine.
Yeah.
Martin Fleischman and the other guy, when they were doing the cold fusion stuff,
Mm-hmm.
they were getting exposed to almost lethal doses of X-rays. Both of them died of cancer.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure
Dangerous stuff.
yeah, because of the nature of the materials that they were using were nuclear. They basically created a miniature nuclear power plant, and the isotopes that they were using to create the reaction was transmitting a huge amount of X-rays coming off it. And these guys didn't realize that they were getting exposed to this stuff, and they're both dead now because of cancer.
Sure.
So when you get into this stuff, especially if you get into the high voltage static stuff, and you're playing with isotopes and different elements and stuff, you better know what you're doing because you could be playing with fire. Now there is a way to actually protect yourself from this stuff. It's
Faraday cage.
it's no, 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 God, no. Faraday cage won't help you in this. No, no, no. We're talking, the
Lead.
stuff that you wear, lead plates, the stuff that you wear when you get an X-ray done, that lead apron that they put on your body,
Hmm.
protect your thyroid, and also there's a pill you can take. It's called C60, and that is a beta blocker that protects your thyroid gland. So if you're dealing with stuff like this, I'd be taking that C60 and I'd have some lead shielding around your device.
Sure. Sure. Do you think a regular
Well,
Tesla coil is gonna emit a significant amount of X-rays?
depends how you use it. If you're hitting, using noble gases and then you're using nuclear isotopes like thorium and using heavy water and stuff like that, yeah, you very well could be emitting some X-rays, and I would be very, 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 very careful.
Hmm.
Definitely.
Okay.
And
Okay, Mike.
even
I
with
think I might
burn,
want to. Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I think I might want to close it off pretty soon. I got to
Okay,
get
that's
some
all right.
dinner in me.
Yep.
Sorry to make it so quick.
No, it's okay.
I,
That's
I'd
fine.
like I'd like to talk more though. I had a
Yeah, well,
whole
we've
list of
done.
stuff, but I can't find my list.
Yeah, well, we've done over an hour. I'm going to be going live Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I'll be doing a show. I just do one show a week. I call it the League of Extraordinary Inventors. So
Yeah, I
we'll have
saw that.
a regular guys. So you can go to the Faraday Research YouTube channel and click on the live tab, and that's where all the live shows are broadcasted from. You
Okay.
can click on notify me. I usually post the show usually a few hours before showtime, so you'll get the notification. And yeah, just click on notify me, and then when the show goes to air, it will tell you to log in, and you can watch the show live.
Perfect. Are you going to have guests on?
Oh yeah, I supposedly, well, Gerald today told me he's going to be on, so I know I've got Gerald coming on, and hopefully Philip from Montreal. Hopefully he'll come on too. And if Bernie's available or whoever, I send out my invites, and
I failed to
Mike.
give Bernie enough notice for tonight, but he did message me. I'm gonna go ahead and end the broadcast. I got a quick question for you after, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.